righteousness, cause we're running out of time. Floods, earthquakes, fires, droughts, and wars. AIDS, Ebola, West Nile, hepatitis, and SARS. Why no man take these things to heart? Cause the kings of the earth are mad and know not peace. Truth falls in the streets cause no one seeks beyond the surface. If you dare to be so bold, read about the God of Israel and the people he chose. All that glitters ain't gold. Look deep beyond the surface. Follow the light, it's worth it. It leads to something. Yahweh of hosts is his name. The source of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Yah.
Peace be unto you. My name is Tamar Yisrael, and you're watching Beyond the Surface. Have you ever wondered why wars and violence ravage the earth? Earthquakes, drought, and wildfires kill thousands of people each year, causing damage to property in the millions. Why do homelessness, poverty, and disease exist amidst a society of opulence and great wealth? To find out the answers to these troubling questions, you must begin to look beyond the surface. What you see is not the truth. This world is a great illusion crafted by the master deceiver, Lucifer, the prince of darkness. In order to understand this great mystery, you must begin to open the third eye, the eye of divine consciousness. And this eye can only be opened by Yahweh, our Heavenly Father. Only then will you truly understand why there is so much trouble in the world. Beyond the Surface is a documentary formatted program designed to explore topics of interest regarding the end-time scenario, the New Age movement, technology and business and finance, science, ancient history, and who we are as a nation of people through narration, music, and graphics. We'll end the program with a segment called The Watchman that will warn you of evil and give you understanding of righteousness and truth. We hope you enjoy Beyond the Surface, so sit back and enjoy the program.
Africa, motherland or land of bondage. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. History is a people's memory, and without a memory, man is demoted to the level of the lower animals. When you have no knowledge of your history, you're just another animal. In fact, you're a Negro, something that's nothing. The only black man on earth who is called a Negro is one who doesn't know where he came from. That's the one in America. They don't call Africans Negroes. This indeed is a true statement. The so-called Negro doesn't know a thing about his history. All peoples have knowledge of their historical and cultural past, but not us. Why? The answer can only be found in the pages of the Holy Bible, the true history book of the so-called Negro. What then? Yisrael has not obtained that which it seeks for, but the election have obtained it, and the rest were blinded. According as it is written, Elohim has given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, unto this day. According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh put a deep curse upon his chosen people known as the 12 tribes of Yisrael, or the Hebrew Yisraelite Jews. Bondage. captivity, and blindness as to who we are as a race of people are the main components of this horrible curse. We're the only group in this world that this has happened to. Presently, we are known as African Americans, from Afro-Americans, from Negroes, and before that we were simply identified as coloreds. We seem to be the only group of people who are confused about our identity. We don't know who we are, neither do we have any knowledge of our ancestral homeland, our father's land, because we've been spiritually blinded by our God due to our disobedience to his law. Just as Malcolm X stated, you are a Negro because you don't know where you are, and you don't know how you got here. But as soon as you wake up and find out the positive answer to all these things, you cease being a Negro, you become somebody. Armed with the knowledge of our past, we can with confidence charter a course for our future. We've accepted being called by bywords, none of which seem to identify us as a nation of people, especially our latest attempt to call ourselves African Americans. The continent now called Africa is named after a white man, Leotis Africanus. So what is the original name of this mass continent? And were all the people in the land of the land? The enemies of Yahweh are those who took us captive, from the Africans to the Arabs who sold us to the Europeans who purchased us. In a November 7th, 2004 Atlanta Journal-Constitution article titled "Finally Africa" by Leonard Pitts, the writer traced his genealogy to the west coast of Africa, particularly to the Mende people of Sierra Leone and the Songhai of Niger. Once in a remote village in Niger to ask an elder in the community about the slave trade, the story takes a peculiar turn. The niece of the elder, serving as an interpreter, replies, "He has heard your ancestors were taken to America." She continues later by stating, "You've told him your ancestors came from here, and he has heard that also from his own grandparents that some people were taken from here to America." Question: if we are Africans, regardless of tribe, why didn't the elder of this community state that our ancestors or our people were taken? The same reason that no African king or president has stood up and demanded that the U.S. let my people go. For we are not Africans. The ancient Greeks and Romans admired the Egyptians so much that the empires were modeled after Egyptian architecture and religion. For this reason, there are several encyclopedic references that point out that the so-called Negroes are not part of the racial stock of the children of Ham, from whom descended the Egyptians. That's right. Even Europeans want to make sure that Negroes understand that we are not a part of the ancient Egyptians. Referencing the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary by Merrill Tenney, Ham, the youngest son of Noah, he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Libyans, Canaanites. Genesis 10, 6 through 10. His indecency brought a curse upon Canaan. Ham is also used as another name for Egypt. Referencing Insight into the Scriptures, Volume 1, 1988, the early Egyptians are described as generally small-statured, slender, and while not Negroid, dark complexion. If we are not Africans, then who are we? You must understand that there are two dark races of people upon the earth: the children of Ham, or the Africans, and the children of Shem, which includes the Hebrew Israelite Jews. The so-called Negroes are the Hebrew Israelite Jews, descendants of Shem, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Dawid, and Yahshua, our Messiah. Just as Yahshua the Messiah was able to hide among the Egyptians in the days of Herod, and Moses was raised in Pharaoh's courts, so even the same lineage of people found themselves enslaved among various African tribes, only to be eventually robbed of their true royal heritage, not as kings and queens, but as the servants of the one and only true and living Elohim. From biblical and secular history, we learn that Egypt was a renowned empire that compassed most of the continent of Africa. Yet, the land of Egypt is also spiritually synonymous for the Hebrew Israelites as the land of bondage, according to 7 different references from the books of Exodus to Joshua. In the days of old, the new king of Egypt, which knew not Joseph, dealt wisely with our forefathers because we were more and mightier than the Egyptians. Fearing that we would join to their enemies in time of war, our forefathers' lives were made bitter in hard bondage. Sounds familiar? In the recent past, the American government was so fearful that communism was becoming a threat to the American standard of life during the 1960s that the wise counsel of soothsayers, prognosticators, and astrologers implemented extreme cases of social, psychological, and even physical violence against our leaders, our women, and our children. Woe to the spirit of Egypt. When Joshua, the son of Nun, led our forefathers into the inheritance of the land of Israel, guess who opposed us? The Africans. The Africans were known at this time as the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. Although the land of Israel was known as Canaan, how did these people get there? The history unfolds in Genesis 9, verses 22 through 26. Although many Europeans and Americans, commonly known as Gentiles, use these verses of the Bible to justify their deplorable treatment of our ancestors enslaved in America, the fact remains that Canaan was Ham's son. Ham is the father of the other dark meat, the Africans. Because of Ham's sin committed against his father and mother, his own son, Canaan, was cursed and became just what Yahweh said he would become, a servant of servants. Why must we be familiar with who is who in the Bible? According to Genesis 9:9, Yahweh established his covenant with Noah and his seed after him. Seed as in one. So obviously, Yahweh chose the lineage of one of Noah's sons to maintain his covenant. This covenant was passed through the lineage of Shem, which brought forth the patriarchs, the children of Israel, Dawid our prince, and Yahshua our king. Stay tuned for part 2, Africa, motherland or land of bondage. Keep not your silence, O Elohim. Hold not your peace, and be not still, O Elohim. For lo, your enemies make a tumult, and they that hate you have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted against your hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Allying themselves with the Roman army, Arab merchants, and African kings, and the so-called Jews, who are of the seed of Esau, conspired to do away with our forefathers, the nation of Israel, altogether. According to the author Flavius Josephus, the works of Josephus, War of the Jews, Hendrickson Publishers, 1985, Chapter 9, page 587. The house of Judah, comprised primarily of Benjamin, Judah, and Levi, were sold into Africa as slaves by the Roman general Titus. He is credited with the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD, which resulted in the final demise of the nation of Israel. The war between the mighty legions of Rome and the Jews lasted 3 years and ended in a devastating defeat of our forefathers. Josephus writes of the horrible slaughter of 1.3 million of our people by the Romans. The remaining 97,000 who were 17 years of age and under were rounded up and sold to the Egyptians to work in the African salt mines. Salt was a highly prized commodity. It was often used as money. The Latin term salary is derived from it. Just as the labor of the Jews built the Egyptian pyramids, the Caribbean sugarcane, and the entire industry of America's South, called the New South today, our ancestors blood and tears also built and mined the salt mines of Africa. This was truly back-breaking work. Large slabs of salt weighed as much as 220 pounds each. This hard work would continue as we were consistently sold among the Africans. Almost 500 years later, at the beginning of the 7th century AD, some of the tribes of the Jews settled in the African Islamic city of Medina. As time went by, our people became well established as entrepreneurs of industry, commerce, and business. Unlike today, the Muslims, on the other hand, were farmers. This living arrangement worked until Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, migrated into Medina. He changed the state of the Muslims and set up a charter with the Jews. Muhammad, just as Pharaoh, ruled over the Jews, and they agreed to help defend the city in case of invasion. Initially, the change was peaceful, but various battles between the Jews and the Muslims began. The two smaller Jewish tribes were defeated in battles with the Muslims and were expelled from the land. They were put out and had to leave all their possessions. This left the third tribe of the Jews alone, and eventually almost completely destroyed in the fury of Yahweh through Muhammad. Unsuccessfully allying themselves with an invading pagan nation, our men were slaughtered and our women and children were sold into slavery again. This account is documented in the Quran, Book Surah, chapter 33, verses 26 and 27. This was just the beginning of the Islamic Jihad, or holy war, throughout the continent of Africa, which was equivalent to the European Crusades. Remaining Jewish tribes were scattered throughout the African continent, and the African Muslims found much pleasure in defeating our splintered nation and enslaving us. Jewish tribes were already at risk because we were settled in amongst Hamitic or African nations in their lands. The Hebrew Israelites, Jews, spent 1,600 years in Africa, dispersed throughout the African continent as slaves and second-class citizens. We were given other names and identities just as the curse had prophesied. The Jewish slaves taken to South Africa were called colored, just as our people whom were brought to America, the land of our final captivity. The Jews in Ethiopia were called Palasha, which is an Amharic word that means alien resident or alien nation. Alienation described the Jews well because our ancestors maintained the culture of the Holy Bible. Our practices then, as they are now, were completely foreign to those of the surrounding nations. It is well known that Europeans actually utilized the same sales methods as African Muslims. Utilizing slave markets for inspection and sale, Jewish women were most often sold for harems, while others were taken to the Mediterranean area to serve as domestic help. The sale and trade of portions of the Jews went on until the legendary triangular slave trade. At this time, it was the native Africans that had become masters in human commodity trading. So often, people are led to believe the lie often promoted by the media. How many people will forget the movie Roots and Kunta Kinte running from white slave catchers in Africa? This scene helps us to visualize and believe the lie that Europeans actually came into the vast interior of Africa, beat up and kidnapped a whole continent of people. How far from the truth is this? In fact, Europeans often acted as business partners to African rulers and merchants in the slave trade along the west coast of Africa. Unfamiliar with the immense African landscape, with no natural immunity to diseases such as malaria, harsh offshore reefs and sandbars, and not to mention the advanced systems of war by native Africans, made the possibility of European invasion infeasible, unlikely, and too costly. Remember, it was called the triangular slave trade. A triangle has 3 points. The first was Europe, which manufactured guns and trinkets. The second was Africa, which produced the slaves, our people. And the third was America, which produced gold. And finally back to Europe. The Africans sold our people to the Europeans. They did not sell their own sons and daughters. They sold the same people that they had been selling for centuries, the Hebrew Israelite Jews. Margaret Washington, associate professor of history at Cornell University, spoke of the African-European relationship. In speaking of the trade that went on between the Africans and the Europeans, for Africans is mainly wanting to get extras, not the necessities. But it is a trade that is controlled by the Africans. So truly, we were sold not for important, valuable goods, but sold for trinkets to Africa's ruling elite. The Europeans and Africans built elaborate slave forts, often called castles, to hold our people while awaiting the next slave ship to arrive. These castles were often inhabited by heads of state to view the human commodity sale. The infamous door of no return is where our people entered before that long journey to the Americas. Although the west coast of Africa was littered with slave forts, the country of Ghana held the majority. Transatlantic slave trade was so much a part of their history that the emblem of Ghana includes a picture of a slave fort. The triangular slave trade route was an agonizing beginning to a 400-year captivity for the kingly tribe of the house of Judah in a strange land that Genesis 15 prophesied of to Abraham. The remainder of the Jews are found in many African countries today, including Ethiopia, Uganda, South Africa, and the Sudan. The Sudan, where black Africans fight black Christians. Little to the public knowledge, these are the same Muslims and Hebrews, respectively. As the Hebrews in Africa, just as the Hebrews in America strive with God for justice, righteousness, and peace in the earth, the forces of capitalism, wickedness, and greed continue to wage war on the children of God and on Mother Earth. As the children of God, we have had only one father and one mother. Due to the wisdom of the wicked nations, the Hebrew Israelite Jews do not know the rich culture which Yahweh our Father destined for us. As most of us do not call upon our Father, truly we do not know the relationship that God has with our virtuous mother, represented not in Africa, but in heaven. Has Mother Africa nurtured our people as her own children? No. Can Africa be considered our motherland? As an abusive mother, yes. Abuse comes from trust betrayed. Our abuse at the hands of Africa, and even at the hands of America, comes from our own broken trust with our God. Should we not take heed and consider the words spoken in the scriptures from Yahweh to Jacob, our patriarch, in Genesis 31, verse 3? Return unto the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you.
Hi, welcome to the Watchman section of our program. Have you ever wondered why the so-called renamed Negro has been in the condition that we've been in this country for the past 400 years? Have you ever asked yourself why is it that a God who created all things and a God who loved all things, all of the things that he created, why did he bring us over here in this captivity for the past almost 400 years that we've been here? There has to be a reason. And like Yahweh said, I don't do anything till I tell my servants, the prophets, first. When you read the Holy Bible, if you read the Holy Bible as a history book, you'll find out that the Holy Bible contains all the nations upon the face of the earth and the things that was going to happen with various nations upon the earth. And when you read the things that said was going to happen to Yahweh's chosen people, then we have to kind of look around and see the estate of our people and see if these things fit this so-called renamed Negro, or if these things that Yahweh said was going to happen to his people, do they fit us, or do they fit the Israelis that's over in Israel today? Let me read something to you here out of the book of Deuteronomy. When our fathers came out of Egypt, Yahweh gave our fathers a law that he told us to keep, 10 commandments, and he gave us statutes and judgments which he told us to keep, and he told us that if we kept these things, our people would rule the earth. But if we didn't keep this thing, let me read something to you that Yahweh said was going to happen to our people if we didn't keep his law. And we can very well see from these things why we are in the condition we are as a people today. We're not Negroes, we're not Africans, we're not African Americans, we are the Hebrew Israelites. And when you check history and read about various tribes over in Africa, you find out that there are many tribes in Africa that are Hebrews, and the Africans know that they are not Africans, and they've given them names like Falasha, which means alien residents, Beta Israel, the Bantu, the Ashanti, the Moors, and several other names of people that the Africans call our people, but the Africans themselves know, and they will tell you, if you know and engage them in conversation, that these people are not of the African descent, that these were the slaves that were sold to them in 70 AD. And this happened when General Titus invaded Jerusalem, according to the words of Josephus. Josephus is a Hebrew that was fighting the Romans at that time. According to Josephus, once General Titus invaded Jerusalem, it was at Passover, and they killed off 1.3 million Jews in the last 97,000. The Romans said, we just got so tired of killing them that we just rounded them up in the temple, and the able-bodied men and women we sold to the Ethiopians to work in the salt mines. But let me read something to you that Yahweh said was going to happen to our people. Now in Genesis 15:13, he told Abraham that his seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them and be afflicted for 400 years, and afterwards would they come out with great substance, and that nation will I judge. Well, let me read something to you out of Deuteronomy 28 chapter that Yahweh said was going to happen to our people while we were before we came into this captivity, and why we are in this captivity. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. It says, and it shall come to pass, if you will not listen unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe and do all his commandments and his statutes which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your store. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your land, and the increase of your cattle, and of your flocks, and of your sheep. Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out. Yahweh shall send upon you cursing and vexation and rebuke, and all that you set your hands for unto to do, until he destroyed you, and until you perish quickly because of the wickedness of your doing, whereby you forsaken me. Verse 32 says, your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people, and your eyes shall look with and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in your hand. Verse 36, Yahweh shall bring you and your king, which you set up over you, into a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known, and there shall you serve other gods, wood and stone. Well, let's examine that. When you go back in Antiquities and read Antiquities, our fathers, when they were set up as a nation, we did trade with all the with nations that was on the earth. But America hadn't been discovered by the Gentiles of Europe at that time. And then once the Gentiles discovered America, then we came over here as slaves. And once we got a little freedom, now we worship the same gods that the nations worship. And if you check the denominations that most of our people serve as far as Christianity is concerned, if you check the denominations you serve, we'll find out that these are the things that we've learned less than 600 years ago. All of the religions that are upon the earth today, except Catholicism, is less than 600 years ago. I mean, Islam came along during the 1300s, and now here we are, not understanding that the Arabs had us in captivity in 606 BC. But we don't know who we are in the scripture, and we don't study history, so we don't know that this thing that took place. So we truly do serve gods that we've learned and practice religion from about gods that we've learned from the people. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to pick up this up at verse 37. It says, and you shall become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among the nations, whither Yahweh shall lead you. Well, they call us everything but Hebrews. They call us Negroes, that other N word, and anything else that they decide to call us, or what we decide to call us. At one time, we call ourselves blacks, Negroes, then we call ourselves Afro-Americans, and now we're African-Americans. But how many so-called Negroes do you know that's married to or either engaged to an African woman? Verse 38, you shall carry much seed out into the field, and shall gather little in, for the locusts shall consume it. Sure, we worked on jobs, and the cheaper jobs in the nations. Verse 41, you shall beget sons and daughters, but you shall not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. We are the captive children of the slaves that was brought over here. Verse 43, the stranger that is within you shall get up high above you, very high, and you shall be very low. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon you and shall pursue you and overtake you till you be destroyed, because you didn't listen to the voice of Yahweh your Elohim to keep his commandments and the statutes which I command you. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and upon your seed forever, because you serve not Yahweh with your Elohim with joyfulness and gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shall you serve your enemies, which Yahweh shall send against you in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And truly, this truly did happen to the slaves. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he have destroyed you. Verse 64 says, and Yahweh shall scatter you among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there shall you serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. Well, just because it says the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch in Syria, in the New Testament, you have to go back and see who called them Christians. It was white people or Gentiles that called them Christians. Now they tell us that we are Gentiles. That's because we don't know who we are as people. Verse 65, and among these nations shall you find no ease, neither shall the sole of your feet find rest. But Yahweh shall give you there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and a sorrow of mind. And your life shall hang in doubt before you, and you shall fear day and night, and shall serve, and shall have none assurance of your life. Verse 68, and Yahweh shall bring you again into Egypt with ships. Egypt means land of bondage. And we did come to this country here in ships. By the way of which I spoke unto you, you shall see this land no more again, and there shall you be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and then eventually no man will buy you. Well, truly, we were sold as slaves. We were black gold when we came over here, but now the job market is drying up, and everybody's taking care of their own but us, simply because during the civil rights movement, when we had the opportunity to build up our neighborhoods, what we decided to do was move out of our neighborhoods and spend our money in shopping plazas and so forth, instead of spending the money in our neighborhoods. Now our old established neighborhoods is run down, and they are becoming a desolation, just like the Creator has said. But let me read something else to you that Yahweh said was going to happen to his people, and just see how these things fit us as a nation of people. All you have to do is read this book, and Yahweh told you exactly everything that was going to happen to our people. Now this is in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah, I'm going to pick this up in Isaiah chapter 3, and I'm going to start this at verse 12. It says, as for my people, children are the oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your path. Because that's simply because the Constitution of the United States was set up in controversy to the laws of God. As for my people, children are the oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause you to err and destroy the way of your path. Yahweh standeth up to plead, and standeth up to judge his people, and he will enter into judgment with his people. It says, verse 16, moreover, saith Yahweh, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, and they walk with stretched forth necks and wanting eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. Therefore Yahweh will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yahweh will discover their secret parts. Well, look at how women dress today. Surely everybody see their secret parts. In that day Yahweh will take away the bravery of your tinkling ornaments about your feet and your cowls and your round tires like by the moon. In other words, Yahweh said that all the good things that we had enjoyed in our land, that we wouldn't have those things, that he was going to take those things away from us. Now, let me go a little further. I'm going to go into in the book of Amos and read some things out of the book of Amos that Yahweh said was going to happen to our people, and we'll see what we can get out of that. Because truly, when you look at the plight of our people, all of the things that Yahweh said was going to happen to his people has only happened to this so-called Negro. And once you know who you are, you'll be able to go back into the scripture and prove that this so-called renamed Negro over here is truly the true Jews and the original Israelites. And when we listen to the songs that our fathers, the slaves, sang, all of them sang Negro spirituals about returning back to the land of Zion one day, especially the Negro spiritual, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. This is in Amos chapter 9, and I'm going to read verse 8 through verse 10. It said, "Behold, the eyes of the Adonai Elohim are upon the sinful kingdom, and he will destroy it from off the face of the earth, save that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith Yahweh Elohim. For lo, I will command and will sift the house of Israel among all nations like as corn is sifted in a sheaf. Yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth, and the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, which say, the evil shall not overtake us, nor prevent us." So we can very well see the Bible is full of things that was going to happen to our people, especially if you have a teacher to show you what Yahweh said. But see, what we do today is we go to church and we sit up and we listen to someone talk to us, and we don't go back and do research in the whole book. The only thing that we want to deal with is the New Testament, because it seems like the New Testament gives us something that we want, and that's something for nothing. That's grace. Grace is an undeserved pass. Grace was the Messiah, but there is going to be a judgment one day. We must all stand before the judgment seat of the Messiah. But when you look at the nations today, when they die, they go zip-tang instantly to heaven. Well, that means that there won't be a judgment, and the word of God is a lie. But let me read something to you about out of Amos chapter 9, and I'm going to read verse 8 through verse 10. It says, this is Isaiah chapter 29, and I'm going to start this at verse 9. It said, "Stay yourself and wonder. Cry out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink." We are drunk with various religions and following the ways of a people that do not even have a culture. Verse 10, "For Yahweh has poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and has closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers and the seers has he covered. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, Read this, I pray you. And he said, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered unto him that is not learned, saying, Read this, I pray you. And he said, I am not learned. Our ministers are not learned in the whole Bible. They're learned in the doctrine that's being taught out of verses and phrases in the New Testament, and the stuff that they're teaching, the Old Testament does not back up. And the New Testament is not a new doctrine. It's the verification of covenants that was made with our people in the Old Testament. Isaiah 29 and verse 13. Wherefore, the Adonai says, For as much as this people draweth near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder. And the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent shall be hid. So we can very well see that the things that Yahweh said is going to happen to his people, these things, as we see so far, these things has only happened to us, this so-called renamed Negro here in America. And we are the only people in America that can't go back and show where we came from. We say we came from Africa, but the only thing we know is that we came from the west coast of Africa. That's where the forts were set up to house the slaves at. The Africans rounded up the people that had been sold to them by Titus. They rounded them up and sold our people as slaves and are not their own people. And if you talk to African people about that and show them what you know, then truly, especially the Ethiopians, they will let you know what took place during that slavery time. Now, this is something that was written in the prophet Jeremiah. I'm going to go into Jeremiah chapter 16 and read some things out of Jeremiah chapter 16 that Yahweh said was going to happen to his people, and see what we get up out of this. It says, verse 11, it says, "Then shall you say unto them, because your fathers have forsaken me, saith Yahweh, and have walked after other gods and served them, and have worshipped them, and have forsaken me, and have not kept my law, and you have done worse than your fathers. For behold, you walk every man after the imagination of his evil heart, that they may not listen unto me. Therefore will I cast you out of this land into a land that neither you nor your fathers have known, and there shall you serve other gods, wood and stone, day and night, where I will show you no favor." Well, let's consider that. We're not a nation. We don't have anyone to speak to us collectively as a nation. And what do we have in our neighborhood that we are offering to our people? When I was a young man coming up, the neighborhood was booming. We had jobs for people. Money was being generated in our neighborhood, vast amounts of money. But nowadays, the money is not generated in our neighborhood, and that means that the tax structure falls down, which means that we don't get as many of the city's benefits, like street sweeping and different things like that. We don't get those benefits as other neighborhoods do that that pay into the tax system and are a good neighborhood. But regardless to all the things that has happened to us, let me read some things to you now that's contrary to what man is saying, but these are the things that Yahweh said is going to happen to his people once the Messiah returns back to this earth. I'm going to read some things for you in Isaiah, in the prophet Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 62, and I'm going to start this at verse 1. "For Zion's sake I will not hold my peace, and for Jerusalem's sake I will not rest until the righteousness there go of as the brightness, and the salvation thereof as the lamp that burneth. And the Euro-Gentiles shall see your righteousness, and all kings your glory. And you shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahweh shall name. You shall be also a crown of glory in the hand of Yahweh, and a royal diadem in the hands of your Elohim." Now, let me go and read something. Just talk about the regathering, how Israel is going to be set up to rule the nations once the Messiah returns. That is the promise. The promise is that when the Messiah returns, he's going to gather his people out of captivity and set up a Davidic kingdom on this earth that's going to last for 1,000 years. Satan had 6,000 years, and we see what he's done to the earth. Now it's the Messiah's turn. But the first thing he has to do is, when he returns, is put out all rule upon the earth, as the book of Daniel and Revelation state. Then will he gather his people from the four corners of the earth back to our God-given land, that we may reign with him in that land. Of course, everybody that's going to be saved out of this is going to reign with him, but not in positions of power. It said every man is going to return to his own land, and every man is going to return to his own people. And according to the book of Zechariah, Zechariah says that Yahweh is going to take the house of Judah, the governors of Judah, and Judah is going to be put in all these countries, and Judah is going to be the one that's going to rule the earth with the Messiah for 1,000 years. And to verify that, what you might want to do is go into Revelation chapter 7 in Revelation chapter 14. Everybody talking about how they're going to forever be with the Lord. When you go in Revelation chapter 7 and read Revelation 7 and Revelation 14, and you're going to find out that it was only the children of Israel that will be with the Messiah in the city of Jerusalem for that 1,000 years. But let me read something else to you out of the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 66, and I'm going to pick this up at Isaiah chapter 66, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 15. It says, "For behold, the Adonai will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Adonai plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Adonai shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination in the mouth shall be consumed together, saith the Adonai. For I know their works and their thoughts. It shall come that I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my glory." This is after the war of Armageddon. Verse 19, "And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Spain, to Africa that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. And the Gentiles shall bring all of your brethren for an offering unto Yahweh out of all nations, upon horses, and in chariots, and in leaders, and upon mules, and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, said the Adonai, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel unto the house of Yahweh. And I will take of them for priests and for Levites, saith the Adonai. For as the new heavens and the new earth which I make shall remain before me, saith Yahweh, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. They shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring to all flesh." So as we see, Yahweh talks about setting up a kingdom on this earth, and the nations bringing his people out of captivity from all over the earth and bringing them back to their own land and setting up a righteous kingdom in Jerusalem. And when you read the prophet Micah chapter 4, it tells you about how all of the nations are going to come up to Jerusalem to see the Messiah once the kingdom is set up here on this earth. But let me read something to you about the new millennial temple that Christ is going to build once he returns back to this earth. This is in the prophet Ezekiel chapter 43. Now remember, Yahweh said, I don't do anything until I tell my servants, the prophets, first. This is why we've been reading these things. What these things have shown is why we were brought over here in captivity. And Genesis 15:13 tells you that we would be here for 400 years, and all of the dire things that was going to happen to us as a people. But once the Messiah returns, let me read something to you out of Isaiah chapter 43. It says, afterwards he brought me to the gate. Now remember, this is a vision that Ezekiel is seeing pertaining to the new temple that Christ is going to build once he returns. Verse 1, it says, afterward he brought me into the gate, even to the gate that looks toward the east. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like the noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. And it was according to the appearance of the vision which I saw, even according to the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city. And the vision was like the vision that I saw by the river Chebar, and I fell upon my face. And the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate whose prospect is toward the east. So the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of Yahweh filled the house. And I heard him speaking unto me out of the house, and the man stood by me. Excuse me. Verse 7. And he said unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. In my holy name shall the house of Israel no more defile, neither they nor their king with their whoredom, nor by the carcasses of their king in their high places. So from what I read, the Messiah is going to set up a kingdom and among the children of Israel, even after the first resurrection. I'm going to read something to you out of the book of Revelation. Even after the first resurrection, let's read some things that's going to take place about the new city of Jerusalem. This is in Revelation chapter 20, and I'm going to pick this up at Revelation chapter 21. I'm going to pick this up at chapter 21. It says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Elohim out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men." Now, verse 9. "And there came unto me one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials full of the 7 plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come here, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife." Now, the church of today say that they are the Lamb's bride. But we're going to see what John saw. It say, and he carried me away into the spirit of a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, New Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. And her light was like to a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written down, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So if after the first resurrection, the new city Jerusalem had 12 gates, and with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, what we have to ask ourselves is, where is everybody else's gate to this city? What this tells me is if that the nations don't go into the city with the 12 tribes of Israel, then they will not enter into this city. So as we see, a lot of things is being said today that's not really the truth, but what you need to do is study to show yourself approved. Read your own book, and then the things that you don't understand, go into our website. It's thenCci.com, and ask questions, send us emails, or you can come by the Knesset. You can come by here, and we will sit up at the Culture Center, and what we will do is we will help you to guide yourself through the things, this book, by the things that you read, and show you that Yahweh truly is the God of Israel, and he's coming back to save his people along with mankind. Peace, prosperity, and Yahweh be with you all.